Hello, I'm Eduardo Guerrero, urban designer. Welcome to Crossing City Limits, a podcast about the environment and culture, a virtual place where designers and urban idealists share their stories without limits.
And it's a chance to elevate the conversation around the importance of public space, that it's a piece of infrastructure that should be thought of just like we do schools and hospitals. It's essential to the well-being of our community.
In this episode, I speak with urban designer Anna Robinson about Native Australian participation, gender inclusion, and sustainable open space as critical element of planning. Thank you very much, Anna, for being here with us today. I appreciate your time. I know that we are in different time zones.
Thanks, Eduardo. I'm waking up and I've already had 2 double-shot coffees, so I'm ready to go.
So please tell us, what have you been doing in the last months?
In the last couple of months, I'm based here in Sydney, Australia. So we've been through a 4.5-month lockdown in response to the COVID pandemic. So I've been doing a lot of working from home, getting to know a lot of new people in my organisation virtually, which has had its interesting challenges. And I'm working on a lot of projects that are oriented towards major infrastructure investment here in Sydney. So we're playing a little bit of catch up. We had a period of time with one of our governments here who didn't invest a lot in infrastructure. We're playing major catch up, investing in some metro train lines, which we're working on. And then also some other infrastructure projects, which are a little bit more aligned to driving, which is not, I think, the most important form or mode of transport, but it's still a necessary part of helping our cities function. So yeah, I'm working on a range of different projects around Sydney that have that kind of lens on trying to help our city be the best that it can be.
And you told me that you are in a new role now in your professional life?
Yes, yeah. So actually I returned to work from maternity leave in June this year. Just had my second little baby girl. And when I came back to work, I said to my boss, I'd like to do something new and different. So my background is I'm an urban designer. I love working on complex city shaping projects. I've also recently finished an MBA. So joining those 2 skills together, I was offered the opportunity to lead a team of 100 water and civil engineers. So I'm very focused on the strategic side of what kind of work our team pursues and how we're delivering technical excellence for our clients in the water and civil space, which includes a whole broad range of things from water planning, so thinking about the way that water is distributed around our city, water infrastructure design, so all the pipes and plants that help move water and wastewater around the city. And we also do a lot of flooding and water quality work. So that's kind of my water team. And then I've got a civil infrastructure team, which is involved in anything from urban developments through to aviation, defence, utilities and civil rail. So it's kind of focusing on helping all those people get to know what all their colleagues do. In the past, maybe they haven't had that focus on collaboration and communication and understanding what everyone does. And what we're finding is, as everyone gets to know their 100 team members, there's more opportunities for collaboration across the business and clarifying some of the roles. There's a lot of overlap between the teams as well. So just set some parameters around, okay, if it's this type of project, that's focused towards your team's skill set. But if it's this type of project, then that's more our team. So I kind of join the dots between these 100 people and help them get their jobs done to the best of their ability.
Well, as I understand, that's one of the role of the urban designer, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I see urban design, I guess one of the things I love most about it is that it's about problem solving. We can't ever do that in isolation. That's one of the things I love about urban design is that you, as a discipline, we don't ever work on our own. We're always talking to other specialists, whether it's architects or landscape architects, graphic designers, environmental scientists, road engineers, civil engineers, water designers. That's one of the things that I love about it. So I'm kind of putting my urban design hat on to problem solve, not just at a city level, but at an organizational level as well. And I work for a very large multidisciplinary global organization, and it's almost like it's its own little city. So the urban design problems that we see in the city, and I think about Sydney, it's 4.5 million, 5 million people. My office is around 800 people. So it's just like this little mini city. We've got all these different people with all these different needs and desires and passions and objectives. And it's about getting our organization to hum the same way that we think about the city.
Yeah, it's like a mini city within the city, right?
Yeah.
It was possible to use the hat of the urban designer during the pandemic. How was that challenge?
What I observed here in Sydney was the way people used their local spaces was very different. So there was a greater dependence and reliance on local parks, local streets, whereas and like local coffee shops. So people weren't going into the city to work. So it's almost like our downtown, it didn't die, but it definitely receded in terms of its hierarchy and performance. And the local areas of our city thrived with all this local support. So I think one of the challenges as urban designers going forward will be, how do we reinvigorate our Sydney CBD or downtown whilst still supporting all our local centres, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. In previous conversations that we have had, you've been telling me that you've been in the park. You have a very strong relationship with the open spaces. I'm wondering how was the role of the open spaces during the lockdown?
Yeah, so one of the fantastic projects I got to work on, which kicked off in February last year, so just before the pandemic was hitting, was a public space ideas competition, which we ran with the Committee for Sydney, which is an independent think tank that advocates for better quality outcomes across the whole of Sydney, and the New South Wales Department of Planning. And it's actually probably one of my favourite projects that I've worked on. And it was not about urban design, but it was about applying urban design thinking to how do you design a brief for a competition? How do you set up the competition so that you're getting a broad range of responses from many cross sections of the community? How do you ultimately pick some of the best ideas to recognise? And we were really concerned, actually. We're like, should we still go ahead with this competition? And we thought, now more than ever before, it's so important to think about public spaces, because everyone is in this different situation, and we are in this moment where we can think differently about the way that we conceive public spaces, open spaces. And what ended up happening, some of the local governments here had some fantastic initiatives around, and I think actually Oakland, California, we often looked across there to see what they were doing over there with some of their road closures that were temporary, to create new spaces for the public that people could use during this unusual time. And initially they were conceived of as temporary, but actually some of them have become more permanent. And so we've seen that happen here in Sydney as well. And some of the ideas that came out of the public space ideas competition recognised that there was a need to think differently about public space, and it was a chance to elevate the conversation around the importance of public space, that it's a piece of infrastructure that should be thought of just like we do schools and hospitals. It's essential to the well-being of our community and often our environment. You know, we need those green spaces to provide relief from some of the more urbanized parts of the city. So, I'll send you a link to the website. There were some really great ideas that came out of it, and it was very timely given the way that we were all using public space differently.
What is the relationship of your work with the Indigenous?
Yeah, I wanted to kick off this recording by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which I'm meeting you this morning. So I'm on the traditional lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation here in Sydney, and we often commence any of our meetings by paying our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And this is something that I've seen as a trend that's a very positive trend that is happening in our urban design industry here in Sydney in particular. There's a greater recognition of the fact that the work that we do is on land that has a 60,000-year-old history, and that goes an incredibly long way back. And there's been a shifting of focus. So we often talk about the need for designing for country in our projects, and that's recognizing the many, many years of history and the understanding of the land by the traditional owners of that land here in Sydney. And I'm seeing that being prioritised not just in terms of the work that we do as urban designers, but also our clients prioritising that as something that's very important. One of the things I was going to talk about was the fact that this particular weekend, I'm in the process of writing a bid, so a proposal for a project that my company is trying to win. It's with a very key government client here. We've been doing a lot of work with them for many, many years. And one of the things that I'm looking at is writing an Aboriginal participation plan for the project specifically. There's a requirement from state government here that proposals for projects over a certain fee threshold require an investment of 1.5% of the total project fee towards hiring Aboriginal employees or appointing Indigenous subconsultants or helping with the capacity building for various Indigenous organisations. And what we're doing at the moment is trying to think about how we can push the boundaries above and beyond what the bare minimum is to go beyond that 1.5% investment. And we've got some people that we're talking to both internally within our organisation and also externally around building relationships. That's kind of the key thing that we see that needs to happen, so that we've got these long-standing relationships with Indigenous businesses that we can be engaging with to help diversify the people that are working on our projects, but also provide benefit to some of these Indigenous subconsultants. So I just think it's something that in the past, it hasn't been just lip service, but I think what I'm seeing as we go through all these projects, there's a greater value placed on diversifying our teams, being more inclusive in the way that we do the work that we're doing. I shared an anecdote before around how, 20 years ago, we didn't even do community consultation for some of our projects. We just kind of said, this road is getting built. We're going to acquire your land. We need it. Whereas now, kind of the first step change with that was informing the community that there was a need to do something and seeking their feedback and hopefully working with the feedback that was provided. What I'm seeing now is an even greater trend towards inclusivity. So it's thinking specifically about designing cities for a whole broad range of users. And sometimes that's helped by having a special focus on one particular group or another. So one of the initiatives that I'm involved with at the moment is there's a women's safety charter, which our organisation has signed up to, jointly run by two state government agencies here, the Greater Sydney Commission and Transport for New South Wales. And it's just putting that lens of thinking about the way that we design spaces and places in our cities so that they're safe for women at all times of the day, all times of the night, into the weekend. Because often if a space is safe for women, it's safe for everyone. But by having that special focus, yeah.
The cities for men, and there are no cities for kids or for women or for elder.
Yes, exactly. That's right. Yeah.
It's super dramatic. I've seen that across many other experiences.
Yeah, I think it's something that we're getting better and better at. And we're seeing kind of this shift towards inclusivity, towards Indigenous landowners and people. There's this shift towards recognising the needs for women in particular. There's also a greater emphasis on designing for people of all abilities. So some of the other work that I've done in the last couple of years was around a guideline for inclusive playgrounds, making sure that children of all ages and all abilities could benefit from the local playgrounds that we have across the whole city. It was called Everyone Can Play. So I've kind of seen those three areas of focus of inclusivity. And what I was thinking about before we got together this morning was what's going to be the next iteration of inclusive design for cities? Who are we not considering at the moment? We need to shift our focus towards. I don't know what the answer is yet. I haven't thought about it enough.
This focus that is related with inclusivity, how that translates into the team. There's new ways of developing the questions, the new ways of analyzing the problem, new ways of producing the work. What is the impact on your daily life?
Yeah, it's huge. We, as an organization, some parts of our business do not have particularly diverse teams. So the first step is internally making sure that we're hearing from a broad range of people around how we're solving the problems that we're trying to solve. And that could be making sure that we have graduates involved in projects as well as technical directors, because 20-somethings have a different way of looking at problems to much older people. It could be around that gender diversity, making sure that if we're doing a big piece of infrastructure that we've got a genuine mix of genders in the team. It could also be including people from different cultural and linguistic backgrounds to make sure that we're thinking about different needs that are very culturally aligned. I did a piece of work a couple of years ago looking at leisure and aquatic centres across one of Sydney's largest council areas, which is also one of its most culturally diverse. And it's kind of in the central part of Sydney. So Sydney's geography is a little bit skewed. When I say the centre of Sydney, I'm talking about a particular area called Canterbury Bankstown, which is actually about 20 kilometres inland from the coast. So a lot of the local government areas that are on our coast use leisure and aquatic centres. So I'm talking about swimming pools, for example. They use swimming pools in a completely different way to parts of inland Sydney, which are a whole lot hotter during summer, simply because they don't have the coastal breeze. So swimming pools are used to cool off, not to go and swim laps. So there isn't a need for a 50-metre Olympic swimming pool to cool off. So the way that we're thinking about the design of those recreational facilities is really different based on what the community demographic is that's using them. So again, if you just had a homogenous design team looking at that problem, you're not going to get the richness of response that you need. So
they're going to look through their lenses and they're going to find everything perfect.
Yeah. So I think to answer your question, it's around diversifying our teams to make sure that we've got a really broad range of perspectives in all the work that we're doing. And we know that we get better outcomes when we have diverse teams. We get better problem solving. You don't get groupthink. We've got a really big push at the moment towards ESG, which is environmental and social governance. We've got a whole strategy which is framed as being focused on delivering sustainable legacies for the people that we work with, the people that we do work for, and the communities that our projects are in. And one part of that is around improving social outcomes for these people. And that's kind of related back to diversity and inclusion in terms of targets that we set as an organisation. but it's also got that really strong environmental focus, and it's particularly relevant with all the COP26 work that's been going on recently. So
yeah, last week,
yeah,
we're waiting for the final agreements.
yeah. So on a completely separate note, there's a hilarious campaign that's been run out of Glasgow by a comedian from here in Australia who has been shaming our Prime Minister around how poorly he is committed to the COP26. He was kind of a little bit flippant about, I don't know if I'm going to go. I've got some other things on. It's like, anyway, that in and of itself is hilarious. He bought some billboards. I'll send you some photos of them, but it was around Australia's somewhat lackluster commitment to COP26. However, the organisation that I work for has a really strong focus around environmental and social governance. We've got a new president who's I'm very proud to say is an Australian, and she and our CEO are very focused around making sure that the infrastructure projects that we're working on are not detrimental to the communities and the environment that we're doing work in. And it's reframed the types of projects that we're doing and the clients that we're doing work for with a really strong risk assessment up front to make sure that we're not involved in any negative impacts to the environment. So historically here in Australia, we've done a lot of mining projects, which are in some parts of the country very contentious. And we've just got some really strong ESG performance targets that we're setting as a business. And by setting those targets, we're going to have to hold ourselves to account to make sure that we're delivering on them. So I know that sometimes there's debate around whether targets are an appropriate way to bring about change. I think they're a very tangible way to bring about change.
Sounds like we're working for the new century.
I really hope so, Eduardo. We owe it.
Yeah.
We owe it to our children and grandchildren.
Yeah, when I think in all these issues about global warming and all the speed in which all these agreements are being developed, yeah, I think in the little ones.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that, we're talking about the step change before in terms of inclusive design. I think the other thing that's happened here in Sydney, our New South Wales Department of Planning has historically been very planning focused. So they've looked at planning controls for permitted uses and building heights and densities and land zoning, but they haven't always thought about things like open space and urban tree canopy and biodiversity. So in the last couple of years, we've been working with them to develop what we've called green plans, which sometimes retrospectively, but sometimes proactively look at open space requirements for densifying populations to make sure that people have access to good quality open space. And we've done assessments of urban tree canopy because we know that there can be significant cooling effects, especially in parts of Western Sydney that don't get that coastal breeze. So again, I'm seeing that positive change towards environmental planning with our clients, which I think we're heading in the right direction.
That should be the bottom line, the standard and more. Great. So these projects that you are addressing comes from the public sector, or they are initiatives of the company? Yeah,
it's a bit of both. So we do a lot of work for both public and private clients here in Sydney, and I think there's, in terms of the briefs that we're seeing, there's that shift towards an environmental and social focus. As an organisation, we've also got a lot of internal initiatives that we're involved with, that we drive, because we know that we want to attract the best talent that we can find, and it's a very hot job market in Australia, and I think probably around the world, probably seeing similar things where there's a lot of people who they want a bit of change in their life after being in lockdown for a while. And so changing jobs is an easy thing to do. So we want to make sure that we're attracting and retaining the talent that we have. One of the initiatives that I'm really proud to be leading since returning to work from maternity leave is a women's mentoring circles group, which we have here in Sydney. So it's called M Circles. We have events both at a very local Sydney level, then also a broader Australian, New Zealand wide level where we get all the women in the business to get together. Sometimes it's sharing career journeys, inspiring people to know about various programs that we have within the organisation. And most recently, we had some technical talks by two of the women in our civil infrastructure team focused on safety for women in the city. So some research that one of our team members has done, and then also some research around how women move around the city, because women move in a very different way to men. We've got the statistics and the data to back up. Women do lots of little journeys throughout the day, whereas typically men will travel from home to the city and back. So there's just a completely different travel patterns that happen. So again, we need to be designing for that. So we had a group of, we've got about 200 women in our Sydney office. We got together, this was during lockdown, so we were all able to dial in on Teams and share this knowledge. And now that we're back in the office, we're planning a face-to-face event for later in the year to just celebrate what a challenging year it's been, and also to welcome all the new females who started during lockdown who haven't had a chance to build their network across the organisation. So that's something that I run with a couple of other awesome women here in Sydney. And it's, just part of fostering that network and helping women across the business see, whether they're at graduate level or, young professionals, to see who our female leaders are, so that they can see what options are there for them as part of their career journey.
That's fantastic. I see the seed of female urbanism designed by different needs.
Yes, yep, absolutely.
In other places, I've seen how women are taking in charge and protesting and revealing all these conditions. Very interesting, Anna. I love it.
I love it too. I'm always on such a high. After we all get together, I just feel like I'm on top of the world. It's always so inspiring. We've got so many amazing people that we can be showcasing. So it's something that I really love doing. And
that's part of your normal office work?
Yeah, it's something I've chosen to make part of my normal office work. Yeah, so I kind of drive that for our Sydney office, make sure that it happens regularly, and I've got a lot of freedom to develop whatever program of events I want. But it's a really great initiative supported by the business.
That's awesome. Kudos to the company.
So this was recorded while I was walking around my house, around my neighbourhood during lockdown, and I live near quite a large open space area which has lots of different tree types in it, and as a result of that, it attracts many different bird types. It's one of the things that I love about where I live, the sound of the birds, often hear them waking up. There's something magical about being able to access nature so close to home. It feels like it's a bit of an escape from urban life.
We can hear you walking, and we can hear the sounds of Brook Street.
Yeah, Brook Street is a major road that's not too far from my house. So you've kind of got this intersection of very, very urban life, so road traffic, immediately adjacent to bushland. It's kind of one of the contrasts of living, I guess, in this particular part of the city. You've got this extremity of nature very, very close by, but then also hard infrastructure.
Then you had this, there's a creek, there's a trail running, there's a whippersnipper.
Do you know what a whippersnipper is?
No, but I can play for you.
I heard that it's the sound of summer in Australia. So when, and especially in springtime, people don't really cut their lawn during winter. There's not a need to. And so when it's springtime and then through summer, most Saturdays and Sundays you'll hear either a lawnmower, so someone pushing their lawnmower across the lawn. I don't know what you call them in America, but whippersnippers are the devices that you use to cut all the edges that the lawnmower doesn't get. And it has this, it goes round and round and round. Potentially more irritating sound than a lawnmower whip.
Yeah, the pitch is very, very annoying.
But it's so iconic.
Waiting for the coffee, that conversation. Where is that place located?
It is about 5 minutes walk from my house. It's a local coffee shop that they roast their own coffee beans, and I think they must have done an incredible trade during lockdown while everyone was drinking coffee at home rather than going into work in the city. And it's on a little corner there's local shops. There's about half a dozen local shops. And you go inside, you order your coffee, and then you wait outside while they make it. So again, you've got that sound of the nearby traffic going past. It's kind of this dull hum, and you can hear the tap, tap, tap of the barista making the coffee.
Hi there, how are you?
Hey,
Good. Can I have a small strong latte, please?
yep, have you a takeaway?
Takeaway, thanks.
We're still here with Anna, and we want to learn a little more about her. I want to ask you if there is a place would you like to invite all your colleagues to learn, to admire, to reflect about something?
Yeah. So I found this a really hard question to think about, just one place, because especially as an urban designer, we're not just thinking about one element or characteristic of experience of places. So I've got a short
It can be more than one.
Yeah. And I immediately went to places that I traveled to before lockdown, and also before I had children. Because I find visiting new places, you have this heightened sense of awareness. You've got very open eyes, and you're seeing and observing all the little details that you don't normally see when you're just traveling through your normal day-to-day life. So I was thinking about like a landscape experience that I would love my colleagues to see. And then I was thinking about a particular building experience that I would like them to see. And then I was thinking about a public space experience. So my first one was Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, which I was lucky enough to get to. And I was able to spend a week climbing to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. And one of the things that's most interesting about it is every 1,000 or so meters in elevation that you climb, the landscape dramatically changes. It's almost like there's this, if you think about like a geological stratification, it's like there's this landscape stratification. So as you climb, the landscape changes, and it gets quite otherworldly. Some particular plants in one part of the climb that you don't really see anywhere else in the world. And it's like you're on some other planet. And if you're lucky enough to get to the top, which I did, but it was a whiteout, so I couldn't see anything other than white snow and blizzards and...
But you did it.
I did it. And you know what? It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my whole entire life. In terms of emotional and psychological challenges, was just the endurance component. But it was that traveling through the landscape and seeing all these different changes, and it's like each day was a completely different experience. So I'd love people to be able to share that experience and learn from it as well. When I was thinking about a particular building that resonates with me the most, I've got lots of favourite buildings around the world that I've been to, but one that really stands out is Hagia Sophia in Istanbul in Turkey. And one of the things that I love most about it is the fact that through time, it has transitioned from having so many different functions for very different purposes. So it was originally a Christian church, then it became a Catholic cathedral, then it became an Islamic mosque, and for a little while there it was a secular museum, and it's now an Islamic mosque again. I absolutely love Islamic architecture. It's my favourite style around the world. I love the geometry, I love all the pattern. I just find them absolutely mesmerizing places, and I love the journey that building has gone through over time, because it would have been so easy for a new ruler to come in and just demolish it, but instead they added their own layer of interpretation to the building. So it's one of my favorite buildings in the world. In terms of public spaces, one of the ones that I was lucky to get to was Shah Square in Isfahan, Iran. So off the back of my love for Islamic architecture, I traveled to Iran. I also love Persian food. And one of the largest squares in the world is this Shah Square in Isfahan. It's absolutely incredible in terms of its scale, yet it manages to still function cohesively as a public space. It's highly activated all around the edges. There's a bazaar where I bought a beautiful Persian rug, which I'm looking at right now. Yeah, it's right here. We've got a bit of a rug collection here from all the places we've been to around the... I've also got one from Istanbul. It's one of my favorites.
It's very contemporary design.
Probably 100 years old. It's a geometric design, very geometric, but I love, like I mentioned before, I love geometric architecture. So I kind of see this as like the rug version of a beautiful Islamic building. But yeah, there's something magical about this square. It's in winter time, it has a very shallow pond that freezes over. In the summertime, there's people out in the space, lots of groups, large groups of people making good use of it. It's anchored by a couple of beautiful mosques. And then you've kind of got mosques at the southern and eastern side. And then at the north, there's the bazaar where I bought my rug. But it's a magical space that just works in terms of its scale and proportion and activation. So I'd love everyone I know to be able to experience those three places.
Maybe from a more intimate point of view, where would you like to treat all your beloved people to?
Yeah, I have to put my Australian hat on here and say I'd love to invite you over for a barbie in the backyard, barbecue in the backyard. It's kind of the ultimate way of getting people together in a very informal setting. I love cooking. I haven't done enough of it while we've been in lockdown. I love preparing really laborious dishes, often Persian in nature, and sharing food good wine, good Australian wine with the people that I adore. So it's something that we would ordinarily do a lot of, especially in the summertime. You kind of live outdoors rather than indoors. So yeah, I'd love to have you and your family around to my place for a barbecue in the backyard.
Oh, wow. I would love to take that invitation.
Please come.
I might bring some Chilean wine, though.
Oh, you're more than welcome to. I thought you might say that you're going to bring some pisco sours. I remember having a few pisco sours at your house.
I will. And the last gift that you can give us, please choose a song for us.
Yes. I've chosen an Australian classic song from the late 1980s, but covered by an Indigenous artist. So the song is Under the Milky Way, which was originally written by a guy called Steve Kilby from the Australian band The Church. And I actually got to go and see him perform live earlier this year at a beautiful Art Deco cinema called the Orpheum nearby. You would love it. It's such a beautiful space. I went with my mum because my mum and dad had bought tickets, but my dad didn't realise he was going away to play golf with mates that weekend. So I got to go with my mum, which we don't often do. And the version of that song, it's an iconic Australian song. I'd say most people here of at least my generation and above would know it. But it's covered by an Indigenous artist called Jimmy Little, and he just has the most beautiful voice. And I love this version. I discovered it. I think it was released while I was in high school, in my last year of high school. He did an album called Messenger, which is a whole range of covers of Australian songs, and it's just magical. So I hope you love it as much as I do.
Well, I know the band,
do you?
The Church, of course. I have the cassette,
Yeah.
and I know the song, where the 4 photographs of the members are in the,
Yeah.
But it's a very, very melancholic and beautiful, elegant song. I love it. I know that the album was repressed, the vinyl, last year.
It's rare when there are cover versions of songs that are done better than the original. It's
It's better.
Wow.
Now I'm so curious.
This one, I've got goosebumps. I just love this version so much. I listened to it a lot when during my final year of high school. So it has I think you'll really like it.
After this conversation, I'm gonna go and listen to Destination and Under the Milky Way and all of that. And I'm gonna look for that Jimmy Littles.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Anna.
That's okay.
Well, I appreciate your time, all what you have shared. Well, I hope I can see you very soon.
Well, yeah, you just let me know when you want to come around for a barbecue and we'll organise it.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
This episode was produced by Sombra Urbana. Our theme music comes from Hondo Uno, used with permission by composer Sebastian Carreras. Art direction by estudio5.cl. Visit crossingcitylimits.com for more resources and suggestions for upcoming episodes. Please subscribe on your favorite platforms. Thank you for listening.